Support for Ahead of the Curve is brought to you by Manscaped, the best men's body grooming champions of the world. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. The craftsmanship and details of the 4.0 are next level. Manscaped engineered the ultimate body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. This upgraded trimmer includes a multifunction on and off switch that can engage a travel lock, and it also gives you the ability to turn on the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through the additional guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. Did I mention wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CURVE20 at manscaped.com. Stiff, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. Always fun. My second time, so I appreciate you having me back.
No doubt, of course. And so first time we met a couple years ago. Wow, seems like ages ago. At the Virginia Coaches Clinic, and man, you absolutely nailed your presentation. I loved having you on the podcast, and you've been a guy that I wanted to circle back with ever since. And so I'm really, really excited to share some airtime with you today and get to share you with the guests. But if we were let's rewind to a few years ago, and so you get your head coaching job, and you go through the interview process. Everybody knows questions that we're going to ask. Really hard and really I'm sure thought provoking for sure. But then you accept the job, and then it's like, now what? Where's the manual for this? And so I would love to hear, what did your vision look like from day one? So like they talk about the presidential first 100 days. So what did your first 100 days look like? What were some of your first steps? What were some maybe missteps that you wish you could have done differently? But listening to it this time of year, there's a lot of coaches that are going through it. So talk to us about what you went through, how you won it, and then any advice that you have for those guys and gals.
Well, so I was thinking you'd ask me something like this, and I got to tell you, I probably have as big of a unique story as anybody in college baseball, and I don't know if it's going to help the way maybe you thought when you asked the question it's going to help.
Sure.
I came to my job. I was the associate head coach here at Virginia Commonwealth. And Paul Keyes was a longtime head coach and was stricken with stage 5 melanoma. And so in 2012 spring, he started to have back pain. And as we progressed through the season, it got worse and worse. And finally, he got a chance to get him to the doctor. And we had found at that point he was probably going to be blessed with maybe 6 more months of life. And so, boom. Okay, here, now you're running the program. Head coach literally left that day, and had to start fighting for his life and taking care of his family and preparing himself for that. And so immediately I just got thrown into the fire, and I've been very, very lucky and blessed working for Paul Keyes, and he prepared me as a head coach every day. Worked for longtime baseball coach at George Mason University, Bill Brown, same. Just prepared me, to be ready for you're never ready for a scenario like this, but prepared me to be able to take over the team. And so we had to finish the rest of that spring, and myself and our assistant coach at the time, Jeff Palumbo, who's now associate head coach at East Carolina. Coach, I took the pitchers and away we went. Jeff took the offensive players and away he went, and we really just stayed in charge of those areas, but had to walk a team through losing and dealing with the life of their current head coach, and understanding that we were going to probably have to mourn the loss of him. It did happen about 6 or 7 months later that fall, but however, come to grips with that. So there was a lot of teaching and some moments there that that I'll never forget. And as painful it was at the time to go through it, there were some things that I've learned and some bonds that I've made during that time that I'll never forget, and that I will cherish forever, including my relationship with Paul Keys as he got sick and how much we grew. But you really learn of what you don't need when you go through a scenario like that, and what a program really needs and what a program doesn't need. And as we moved through, and Paul ended up passing that, I then took over the program for good in the spring of 2013. It took till about a year and a half after that till I really felt like the program had evolved into mine, and where I was making decisions, and I was no longer just trying to keep the program surviving from the fact that, when you have a legendary head coach pass away, you're trying to keep recruits. You're trying to figure out who you are as a head coach. You're trying to keep the guys on your team from transferring. You're trying to live up to the expectations that he set. So it took me a long time to find my identity, to be dead honest with you, as a head coach. And I had to come to that a little bit differently than a lot of people. So the first year and a half was just spent keeping going what was going, so that the people in the program didn't feel like things had taken a step back, and then slowly start to input, some of my vision, some things that I would do differently. And I've slowly done that over the last, 6 or 7 years of like the position is mine. I've had an unbelievable administration who have made me feel as the head coach from the moment they offered me the job. They instantly were, as much as they love Paul Keys and loved and we wanted to honor the memory of him, they were very adamant, letting me know that at this point now the program was in my hands and I was in charge of it, and they had full faith in me and confidence. And but I will tell you this, Jonathan, no matter how you come into becoming a head coach, you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
And things arrive on your desk where you're like, okay, well, who should I go to for this? And then the person across the desk from you will say, you're the person who has to deal with it.
Sure.
But stuff. You have to surround yourself with really good assistants who have the same vision, and you have to have a administration that feels the same way. But you have to understand that there are things that are going to come up that you can't necessarily prepare for, because you haven't thought of preparing. And and we're going to talk about this probably throughout the entire podcast tonight, but that's where your core values, your standards, your beliefs have to be strong, and you have to stick to them and not waver off of them, because you're going to need those, and that really is the core basis for all your decision making. So to be quite honest with you, I've never won an interview. I've never gone in and been the guy that, I kind of came into it differently. Doesn't mean that I wasn't prepared. It doesn't mean, but because they could have said no. And one of the things that Paul Keys had always told me when I was an assistant here is he told me to act every day like the program was in my hands. He told me to make every decision like I was a head coach. And so he gave me the freedom to do that. I never overstepped. I never looked at him in the seventh inning and said, you should have bunted there. That wasn't what he was saying. What he was saying was, take the piece of the program that he gave me ownership with and really make decisions in it and really try to manage it. And I think a lot of young coaches want that ownership.
Yep.
But we also need to understand that what comes with leadership and comes with responsibility is making tough decisions. And if you're going to be in charge, at what point you do become a head coach, you're not going to be able to look over your shoulder and ask somebody, what do you think? I mean, obviously you want mentors and people to ask to, but I would encourage anyone, if you want ownership and you want a piece of the program to be yours, then you also have to take on the responsibility of the tough conversations, the tough questions.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And so you mentioned your process of coming up with standards and core values. And just this morning, I was listening to Ryan Hawk's Learning Leader show, and he had on a basketball coach in Ohio. And so he laid out his standards and said, and so Ryan flipped this question on him, and he said, well, what if you guys don't win with your standards? And he goes, I can live with that. He goes, but once we get away from being who we are and who we want to be and how we want our programs run, then that's when I can't live with that. So question number one, I would love to hear your process in coming up with those, and that just, I guess that triggered that response that I heard that this morning, and you mentioning that is kind of along the same lines, which I really want to highlight.
Yeah, I think when it comes to starting to learn your core values and your standard, I think the first thing you have to do is look internally, like the standards that we have kind of created for the program at VCU are the only standards, to be honest with you, that I know how to live and coach by. I couldn't live and coach by somebody else's standards because they don't mean that much to you, if you know what I'm saying. Of course, there's pieces that we all want to pull, but they have to be the standards that you absolutely believe down to your breath. Like they have to be the pieces that you absolutely cannot waver from. And and obviously we have there comes our standards, and from our standards may become some team rules. Okay. But really at the end of the day, we ask our guys to be Rams. We ask them to be responsible. We ask them to attack the moment. We ask them to be mentally tough, and we ask them to serve each other. We're Rams. Okay. And so the first thing we talk about is responsibility every day, to be able to show up, and whatever your responsibility is to do in that moment, being ready to be ready. We talk about all the time. When you go to class, what does ready to be ready mean? It means when you sit down, when class starts at 8 o'clock, you are sitting down, you're in there, your notes are out, your book's out, your laptop's open, you're ready to be ready. When the fastball is coming, you're on time and ready to be ready to hit it. We talk to our guys about being responsible means ready to be ready to us. And from there, we want to do everything with an aggressive and a forward mindset. We want to attack the day. I'm a firm believer your day is going to go exactly how you create it. I'm a big believer of that. Your culture is going to go exactly how you create it. And so we try to attack everything we do, and then we ask them to be mentally tough enough to understand that it's not going to go well every day, and that you have to be coachable, and that you have to be ready to understand that there's going to be bad days, and then on those bad days you have to do what is your job in that moment, regardless of how you feel, and then to serve each other, to serve the community, to serve the university, and to serve the team. And we're just trying to, I think anytime we're going through a moment, whether it's a team or with somebody else, you just serve the person next to you. And that was one of the things I learned from when Paul was passing away, and I was, going through that with him, how much he gave to us, to myself and my family. Like he was always worried about what was going on in the program, always worried about how my family was doing. And here he was really living out the end of his life. And so you got to serve if you want to be really, really happy. And so we start there with our core values. We start, it's those things that we think are really at the front of our program. And then from there, we talk more about standard, really anything else, the standard of how we're going to play. Your team changes year to year, but your standards and how you play, I want people to know, no matter what the name is on the back of the jersey, that, oh, that looks like a VCU team, or they act like a VCU team. And so, we set our standards, and those have kind of, we've added standards, we've taken standards away, a little bit from time to time. I'm not a big rules guy. Okay. We have very few rules. I think core values and standards take care of you not having to have more rules. I tell the team all the time, the more rules you have, the more rules you need. It's like everything else, you end up having to create rules because you've set other rules. And so what I've never wanted to set out to be was a guy who said something, hey, this is really important to me on one day, and then forgot about it the next. I never wanted to be that as a head coach.
Right.
Okay. And so that's why everything that we do in our program is really, which I have learned up to that point. Okay. I mean, like what we do in our program is as good of a coach as I am today. I don't try to do anything different than what I truly understand, and I believe is at the core of my values. And so we talk about standards all the time, whether it's academic standards, whether it's on the field standards, and whether it's in the community standards. We talk about those things every day, and how, and ways to improve them, ways to get better at them, but I think those are things, if you're coming up with the standards of your program, they have to believe you have to be able to write them down on a piece of paper within 5 seconds. And if you can't do that, they're not a standard of yours. They're not. Sure. They're not a core value of yours. You should be able to write your core values down within 5 sentences. Like, and if it's more than that, you've probably gone too far.
Sure. No, it reminds me of whenever Steve Kerr went out and met with Pete Carroll. Are you familiar with that story?
I'm not.
So Steve Kerr just got the Golden State Warriors job, and he loved Pete Carroll's practices. So he went out to join him for a practice. And so he was like, man, I love this. Like, what are you doing? And he talked about a lot of the same stuff that you're mentioning of, hey, it's got to be yours. And he said tomorrow, Pete told Steve, hey, tomorrow I'll come back and bring a list of things that are really important to you. And so Steve said he spent like all night trying to come up with this just exhaustive list. And he said he came back with like 20 things. And then Pete was like, no, you need to get it down to 3. And so he was like, oh my gosh. So I know one of them is joy. I know one of them is competitiveness, but it just goes back to, what you were saying. If you can't say it in 5 sentences, then it's really not a core value. It's not something that you can hold them accountable to on a daily basis. And so I want to flip the question with you too. So you've got being responsible, attack the moment. I love attack the moment, by the way. That's amazing. And then selfless and serve, all 4 really, really good ones. So let's say that, and without maybe even giving a name, I'm sure that there's been a situation that's come up that student X has not been responsible in the classroom, or maybe they left their equipment out or something. What does that conversation look like? Because it's one thing to say these, and it's another thing to hold them accountable to what they signed up for.
Well, that happened today.
Oh, nice. So, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff happens daily,
Sure,
and so you're dealing with, especially this time of year, you're dealing with so many newcomers, right? And they're learning and they're trying to, I think you have to take everything on a case by case basis a little bit. There are times where it's a gentle pat on the shoulder and be like, hey man, this is not how we act. Your locker needs to be kept this way. Okay, this is the standard of how we keep things here, and this is. And then there's a conversation today where I'm not going to get into a he said, she said with academic coordinators or professors. The guys know that. Okay, I tell people all the time, what's important to you, your values show what's important to you, or your actions show what's important to you. And so I tell the guys all the time, how do you know that you're in the lineup? Well, I check as soon as you post it. Yeah, because it's important to you. Sure. All right, but yet you don't check your homework assignments that night. And so at the end of the day, just continuing to make them understand what is important to them and how every action, for instance, we had 2 guys today that they missed some assignments, weren't handing in work. They just weren't managing their time right. And I said, okay, well, you need to step away from baseball until you get these assignments ready and manage your time right. And then we had another player get injured today. And before you know it, we were down to 1 middle infielder at practice today. And so, you look at the team and you say, okay, if this is April, all right, because, these 2 guys made bad decisions and could not be a part of the program today because they didn't take care of their academics. And then this guy really got hurt. Like, this is a real injury. This guy really got hurt. We're down to 1 middle infielder right now. And so that affects all of us and affects the entire team. And so, you just try to use those moments to educate the guys and make them see that, look, if somebody doesn't turn in an assignment or we do the wrong thing at the wrong time of year, that could cost us, a game. And that game could be the game that costs us making the conference tournament or being in that large team. Decisions have ripple effects on everything that everything that you do. You have a ripple effect on how you're affecting people and how you're affecting the people beside you. And so we just constantly try to make them understand that every decision they do is going to affect the rest of the team and the person beside them. The other thing we talk about all is you cannot win a championship in the fall. You can't do it. You can't win a championship in the fall. You have to layer days on top of each other, but you can lose a championship in the fall. You can. We can lose a championship on any day,
Mm.
just by people not going to school, not doing the right thing, acting up, getting hurt, not being eligible. So you can lose a championship on any given day. And so, but to earn a championship, you won't do that until April and May. You have to stack days on top of each other. That rent is due every day. But you can certainly lose one. And today we took steps towards losing one, to be dead honest with you. And so, I think that, again, I was long-winded on your answer. I think you handle those situations a little bit differently, and I do believe in giving rope at times. I'm not in there what I don't want to do is go in and be, when I walk into the room, I don't want to take the joy out of it. I can't. Like you do not want to be taking the joy out of your team to where they think they have to be so perfect on every time. I want them to be guys. I want them to be dudes. I want them to love and trust and make mistakes. So you have to be able to manage that. You're going to give them a little bit of rope. You can't ask them to be choir boys all week and then devils on the weekend. We all want our teams to be savages and take chances and take risks, and that just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen on the field without there being a little bit of some eggs broken during the week. So you got to be willing to have hard conversations when they screw up, while not putting it into a scenario where you just detriment the entire season. And don't be afraid to make examples of your best players. You got to pick times when you can toss a guy out of a drill or tell a guy to sit down for a minute, where maybe that freshman looks up and says, "Oh, they're telling that guy to sit down.
Sure.
I better shape up here." And so I think you gain experience. You're going to pick your fights more and more as you get older on what you want to pick. But again, those core values set the tone for how I make every decision.
Right.
And as long as you have strong core values that you believe in, every decision is really quite easy. The conversation is tough, but you know what you're going to tolerate and what you're not. And it's really easy when you get into those recruiting talks, or you get into those disciplinary talks with parents or whatever. Hey, here's the standards. He's well below the standards. You can see that. And the parents will 9 times out of 10 will look up and be like, "No, you're right. You're right."
No, that's really good. And, just to highlight a couple of things that you said, it's one thing of upholding the standard, and it's another thing of almost suffocating them to a point of where there's no joy. And I struggle with that sometimes too. And it's mainly on the focus in or the effort in, rather than the attempts at different things. And so that's definitely something that I've tried to walk the line of, okay, this has been firmly established and defined, and they're towing the line on this, versus, okay, maybe we haven't gone over this enough to where they know where they're at. And so having those standards clear and defined, and I love that. And I wanted to make sure I highlight that too, because, it's not a gray area to say, but once you have those defined, then it's like, okay, hey, listen, this is what we define. This is what we talked about, and this is where you're at. And it makes that conversation a little bit easier, at least.
100%. I think the other thing you have to be able to do, I think good leaders and good coaches do this. You get a sense for when things are starting to get there. Okay. And so I think good coaches and good leaders, whether it's even on a play or a production or something that's in the field, or it's something off the field, I think good coaches are able to look up a day or two ahead of time and somehow create a practice plan or a classroom activity that is getting ahead of this scenario, and getting ahead of whether it's, usually about the 4th week of school is when the first exams come around. All right. At VCU. So, that week we're usually going to have academic meetings prior to those, and just make sure guys are in a good place before they get to their exams, and if I see, if we're doing enough charting and gameplay or whatever, and I'm starting to see maybe a decline in run production with a runner on third less than 2, then you start incorporating that into your practices a little more, instead of reacting to it. Sure. If that makes sense, is to after things go bad, and now you're catching up. So I think you try to get ahead, you try to understand the feel for your room, the feel for your team, where your strengths and weaknesses probably lie within your group, and try to coach those ahead of time.
Oh, I love that. So talk to us about, you're in the middle of the fall, by the way, and I
Yep.
want to thank you for finding some time to be able to join us tonight and for that. But just tell us, what you guys are digging into. How do we win the fall, and what's kind of your process of developing players in this offseason?
Yeah, so we have a unique setup because we share a pro stadium. We
Yeah, you
share a
guys have
double A stadium.
fantastic facilities.
Thank you, I
Recruits that are
appreciate that.
listening.
We are very blessed, and so we do share a double A stadium. And so this year was kind of very unique. The pro season went about 2 weeks longer because it started later this past due to COVID and protocols. So we really took that time to really hit weights. I'm a big weight room guy, and weight room for culture as well. I think the weight room sets and defines your culture that you're trying to preach as good as anywhere, because guys fail, they need each other, you got to help each other, and they're in pain, and so we hit the weight room really, really hard August and early September, and really got into the pitching philosophies and our offensive philosophies in our cages, and try to really isolate those on what we're trying to accomplish, and took some time to work on. I really like that time of year, this early fall, not just for swing, but that's where your assistant coaches and the players develop relationship and trust. I think I think if you can just let them spend time together early on, and it doesn't have to be this drill, that drill, whatever, just talking and flipping and throwing and walking. And so I love this time for that. I don't think my assistants realize that that's purposely what I'm really forcing on, is just the time they're spending and building that trust. Because when we do get into the fall and inter squad start and everyone starts struggling, they trust them and will go to them at that point. And I think that's huge. But so and once once the pro team kind of moves out, we move into the ballpark. We start our skill work like everybody else, and just ground balls and fundamentals of how we want to play outfield defense, infield defense. But I do tell the team when we start team, and I tell them at this moment, we're thinking about swing. We're going to stop thinking about. We're going to start putting together a plan on how we're going to win baseball games. We use the fall to put together our identity of how this team is going to win baseball games, and they start to understand the values that I really find important when it comes to winning, and the things that I really value when it comes to how we're going to play, but also mingling that with their particular skill set of this team, because they're not all the same. Last year we hit a lot of home runs and a lot of extra bases. I don't know if we have that team this year, so we have to kind of evolve a little bit from that standpoint. So that's what the fall looks like for us right now. We take our inter squads in our practice play really, we're very competitive on it. Inter squads are extremely competitive at VCU, and we do them differently. Some of them are extra inning inter squads. Some of them are just today we're playing. Other ones are scenario based. We do them differently, but they mean a lot to us. And I am keeping score, and there's winners and losers, which I'm sure isn't groundbreaking stuff, but on these 45 days when we are together as a team, putting together the formula that we are going to use come February to win a baseball game. And that's really what we're trying to do. And then there's individual evaluations going on and things like that. But you'll have a tough time getting me to talk anything but team concept right now.
Mm-hmm.
Team
really
concept
like
is at the front of everything.
Sure. No, it's really good. And you mentioned you guys have a ton of team stuff. What have you found that you guys need to, I don't want to, overuse the term measure, but just different ways and different things that you guys have done to be able to try and, say, hey, listen, we need to do better at this. We chart this, or, hey, we notice with you even mentioned runner at third, less than two, making sure we get runs in like that. Is there anything that you guys are doing this fall that you really like as far as that goes?
Well, as I've grown to understand a little bit more of this generation player, I have found that maybe not so much bringing attention to things that we're not doing well, as opposed to just incorporating it in practice more. You know, like if we're not doing a great job of driving a runner into third, I really do not mention it much to the team. Okay. The coaching staff and I will talk about it. We will make sure that we are relaying the information of how we want to approach it with the team, but we're just going to implement it into our practice scenario more. And we're just going to work on it more without really bringing it into as being because what I don't want is every time the team comes up and there's a runner on third to think about, oh man, we've been terrible at this. He's got to get this guy in. And then everybody's like, look, you better get this guy in. Mm-hmm. And that's 24-year-old Shawn Stiffler as coach. You know, that's not 42-year-old, you know, and so I've realized, I think through then, that this generation doesn't necessarily react to that. And I think, you know, we try to do the video game, you know, competitiveness where we're just trying to up the level every time. You know what I mean? We're just trying to, you know, because I think the new athlete is competitive in a different way. Mm-hmm. The new athlete, you know, when I grew up, you know, if you were wearing your high school jersey and another guy was wearing his high school jersey, you went out and fought in the street till somebody won. That's just what, you know, and this athlete is a little bit different. They are much more involved in the process because they've heard about the process. Mm-hmm. So they understand stacking this number on top of this number and this number and seeing that incremental growth. And so I think, you know, coaching that way and trying to get them to, you know, just continue to up the ante and layer things on top of each other is something that we really, really try to do. We just try to layer our practices and give a little bit more each time when it comes to the drill work. But I'm very, very big when it comes to we really talk about on the defensive side. We set everything up to stay out of the big inning. That's everything we do, and we do that by really focusing on the pitcher hitter matchup. We're always going to try to win that matchup no matter what. Mm-hmm. We believe in attacking that part of the game. You know, from there we keep first base in order, or second base in order as much as possible. We try to keep the base runner at first base. So we throw the ball to second base all the time when it's hit to the outfield. I mean, we very rarely try to throw to lead base. We're just trying to keep the guy at second base, and then you know, from there we're just, you know, communication is a big part of what we're trying to do with it. You know, from that standpoint is how we communicate it to where the ball needs thrown. And the last thing is we really don't pick a lot of balls in our program. We try to block them, you know, and we're just trying to keep the ball in front of us all the time. We try to keep the ball in front of us all the time. And we try to implement that into all of our drill work. And what I have seen is it's just helped us limit free bases as we the season. And then offensively, we have a set of metrics that we're trying to hit. You know, we really believe that we are trying to score 5 runs. We have shown that when we score 5 or more runs, we win over 60% of our games. And so that's our measure, you know, in offense. So, you know, if we have an opportunity to ever just expand and get ahead and go up one more, whether it's, you know, we will bunt to do that. We will look to score that runner in from third, or we will hit a double. It depends on who the personnel is. But we talk about getting the 5 all the time and what those metrics look like to get there and what we value. And we really value the 3-2 count. We really value, base runners, and we really value pitch selection. And there's things that we really, really value that we measure on top of that. But we're just trying to score 5 runs.
Sure. No, that's really good. So it leads me into my next question, which is how have you found a winning formula with where you're at? Because, you know, there are different coaches in different parts of the country that, let's say, you know, someone is at LSU and then they leave for another job. It's a completely different set of circumstances that they're going to be having to deal with. And so even it doesn't matter what job you take, it's always going to be different, and you have to win within the constraints of that program, good and bad. And so I'd love to hear, because you guys have won and you've been, you know, very successful, and you're going to, you know, brush yourself off and say, yeah, you know, but you have. And so I want to dig into, you know, how have you found success with where you're at? Like what's a formula that you guys are looking for? And you've hit a couple of them already, which I think is fantastic. But I think that you hear a lot of coaches say, hey, we had this, we won with this, and then I wanted more. or I wanted to get the first round pick, or, whatever. And then they're like, but that just wasn't us. That's not how we develop guys. That's not what we're good at. And so I'd love to hear you kind of work through that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that one piece that you just touched on where, you start winning and then you start wanting to up, you want the first round talent, and I think I realized pretty quickly our talent at VCU, though it be very good, seems to kind of level off at a certain spot. Like kind of the talent level that we've gotten over the last 8 to 10 years is about where we are. It's almost, I don't want to say it's as good as we get sometimes, but it is.
No.
We don't get much better or much worse, and then from there, you kind of look up and, our best teams have always hit kind of between these offensive metrics, and our best teams have always pitched kind of between these offensive metrics. So you start to see that the type of player that's attracted to your university, and to your style and to your ballpark and to your geographical area is, kind of this type of pitcher, and it's kind of this type of offensive player. So then from there, I think once you look at that, you can start to put together, if you're really honest with yourself, kind of the formula that's going to help you win. And you're a 3.1 ever had pitching, and then, kind of a 4.1 on the team where we're kind of on the edge of being mediocre. So we're going to hover in that 3 area usually every year. And offensively, we hover between 280 and, 298, 300. That's kind of where we hover. And so you take that style of player that you can attract, and you just do a great job of finding value in them and realizing, okay, this is kind of what they're going to do for us, and how do we make that productive? And then you start putting your formula together to what metrics really lead to winning for that style of player. And we're never going to walk out there and have a bunch of guys throw the baseball 95 miles an hour. We're not. But I also don't value that. That's not something that I'm looking for. We value strike throwers. We value guys who can throw breaking balls behind in the count. And so you have to, because that's also who we can get. If we get a guy who's throwing the ball 95 miles an hour, chances are he's broken somewhere else. He's either got command issues or maybe doesn't have a secondary pitch. Normally if they have command, they throw 95 and they have a good secondary pitch, they're probably not coming to VCU. And I believe in our ability, but that's just the reality. But we do get guys that maybe throw 95 who don't have a secondary pitch or don't have as much command. So we have to figure out where that guy can be valuable for us and how we can develop him to use him. And same offensively, the guy who is 6'3" can really, really run, has a ton of power, and can really defend. Doesn't come to VCU all that much. So we have to pick where we're going to use those different pieces or what they're deficient in. So, we kind of know where our numbers are going to lie, and we kind of know what those breaking points are. And if you pay attention to your teams, if you start looking at the numbers inside the numbers, and you can kind of come up with your own formula for how to win. And then once I've kind of figured that out, 6-7 years ago, to be honest with you, come off it. Like no matter what's new and what's new age, I learn it, I listen to it, I evaluate it. But what I know is what I know right now, and this is how we play. And so I just really stay to it, and I continue to try to refine that process of the style of game that my team's going to play. And then now that I've been a head coach for I think this will be my 10th year maybe, or almost 10 years. It's pretty much this is the style we're going to play. This is who Shawn Stiffler's football teams are going to look like, and Nick Saban's football teams kind of look a certain way, and so not that I'm anywhere near him, but like you just kind of get your style, but you get really good at coaching it. And the biggest thing is find players who can help that piece, help that piece of it.